December 24th, 2000, Christmas Eve. A police officer answers a routine call at a sporting goods store in Irving, Texas. Within moments, he's shot 11 times, then run over by a stolen SUV. His name was Aubrey Hawkins. He was 29 years old, a husband, a father, a cop who never saw it coming. The killers, 7 escaped convicts, armed, desperate, and on the run. Their leader, George Rivas, a man with 18 life sentences, a mastermind who orchestrated one of the boldest prison breaks in Texas history. 11 years later, Rivas would face the ultimate punishment. No last-minute appeals, no dramatic outburst, just a quiet walk into the execution chamber in Huntsville. But what he said in his final moments, after a lifetime of crime, silence, and defiance, stopped everyone in the room. It wasn't what they expected. It wasn't a boast, not a curse, not even a denial. It was something that would haunt the officers who came to watch justice served and make the world wonder, can a man like George Rivas truly feel remorse? We'll get to his last words soon. But first, how did it come to this? What do you think he said? Can someone who caused so much pain offer something real at the end? Drop your thoughts below, because what comes next will surprise you. George Rivas wasn't born a monster. He was a kid from El Paso who, by all accounts, started out like any other boy, playing outside, watching TV, dreaming big. He even wanted to be a police officer. Irony runs deep in this story. But somewhere along the way, the line between right and wrong blurred. By the time he was in his early 20s, George wasn't chasing badges. He was chasing fast money, adrenaline, and control. And he liked the power that came with a gun in his hand. He gave his dogs names like Ruger and Beretta, not out of love for pets, but as symbols of the life he admired. A life built on fear, on dominance. His first major crime? A robbery at a Radio Shack in 1992. Then another, and another. By 1993, he'd hit stores across Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. Furs, toys, Yay Us, Oshman's sporting goods store. Each heist bolder than the last. He wasn't just stealing, he was building a reputation. When he was finally caught, the justice system handed down 18 consecutive life sentences. Not 1, not 5, 18. The message was clear. George Rivas would never walk free. But prison didn't break him. It sharpened him. Behind bars, he became a strategist, a recruiter. He didn't just serve time, he studied it. And by the time he turned 30, he had a plan. Escape. Not a reckless breakout, not a desperate run. This was orchestrated. He handpicked 6 other inmates, men with skills, with nerve, with nothing left to lose. On December 13th, 2000, George and his gang overpowered guards, stole uniforms, raided the armory, and vanished in a prison maintenance truck. They left behind a note. You haven't heard the last of us yet. And for 6 weeks, the country watched as the Texas 7 vanished into the winter night, robbing stores, living off the grid, becoming legends in the worst way possible. But it was never about freedom. It was about proving he was smarter, faster, stronger, that the system couldn't hold him. George Rivas didn't just break out of prison, he declared war on it. And when a young police officer named Aubrey Hawkins showed up at the wrong store on Christmas Eve, Rivas made a choice, one that would seal not just Hawkins' fate, but his own. Because 11 years later, no master plan, no bravado, no notoriety could save him from a single room in Huntsville. And the silence before the final words. On December 24th, 2000, 9:07 p.m., a patrol car pulls into the parking lot of an Oshman Sporting Goods in Irving, Texas. The lights are off inside. The doors should be locked, but something feels wrong. Officer Aubrey Hawkins steps out, alone, standard procedure. He doesn't know he's walking into the final moments of his life. He doesn't know the men inside have just looted 44 firearms, $70,000 in cash, and are armed to the teeth. He doesn't know the leader of this gang, George Rivas, has already decided no witnesses. The first shot rings out before he can react. Hawkins is hit 11 times. A storm of bullets meant to erase him. Then the SUV lurches forward. It runs over his body, stops, and then, chillingly, reverses, drives over him again. This wasn't panic. It wasn't chaos. It was calculation. And behind the wheel, George Rivas. The gang sped off into the night, laughing, celebrating, telling each other they just killed a cop. They didn't know his name, and they didn't care. To them, he was just a uniform in the way. But to Irving, he was everything. A husband, a son, a quiet mentor who arrived early to help rookies with their reports. The kind of officer who greeted everyone with a good morning, even those having the worst of days. His wife got the call at home. His parents sat awake, waiting for news that would break their hearts. And just weeks later, his daughter was born. Never to hear her father's voice, never to feel his arms around her, never to see him smile at her graduation. For 41 days, the Texas Seven vanished into the American landscape, like ghosts moving through winter towns, back roads, and forgotten motels. They weren't just fugitives. They were a criminal caravan, armed, desperate, and convinced they could outrun the law forever. After killing Officer Aubrey Hawkins, they fled Texas in stolen vehicles, crisscrossing state lines with military precision. They checked into motels under fake names. They posed as construction workers, delivery drivers, once even as Christian missionaries. In Colorado, they settled into a quiet RV park in Woodland Park, blending in, laughing, planning their next move. They thought they were invisible, but someone saw them. On January 20th, 2001, a woman in El Paso was watching America's Most Wanted. The episode featured the Texas Seven, their faces, their crimes, their escape from the Connolly unit. Something clicked. She called her friend, Wade Holder, who managed a trailer park in Colorado. "Those men on TV, I think they're staying at your place." Holder looked again at the two men in the RV, the ones who paid in cash, kept to themselves, and drove a Jeep Cherokee. He checked the broadcast photos, and his stomach dropped. He called police. By the next morning, the El Paso County Sheriff's Department had the park surrounded. The first arrest came fast. George Rivas, Joseph Garcia, and Michael Rodriguez were found in a Jeep near the gas station. They didn't resist. Rivas just stared ahead, silent, his empire crumbling in silence. At the RV, Randy Halpern surrendered peacefully. But Larry Harper? He barricaded himself inside. Armed, cornered, done. After a tense standoff, a single gunshot echoed through the cold mountain air. When officers entered, they found Harper dead, shot once in the chest, once in the temple. A final act of control and a life slipping out of it. 2 days later, the last two, Donald Newbury and Patrick Murphy, were tracked to a Holiday Inn in Colorado Springs. In a surreal twist, they negotiated a live TV interview before surrendering. Cameras rolled as they denounced the Texas justice system, Newbury sneering, "The system is as corrupt as we are." It was over. The nationwide manhunt, fueled by fear, outrage, and a $500,000 reward, had ended not with a shootout, but with a phone call from a viewer. One tip, one episode of America's Most Wanted. That's all it took to bring down the most notorious prison escape in Texas history. But for the families of the fugitives and the family of Aubrey Hawkins, the real reckoning was just beginning. George Rivas never denied he was the leader. He didn't need to. His fingerprints were on the escape plan, on the stolen truck, on the note left behind. You haven't heard the last of us yet. But when it came to the murder of Officer Aubrey Hawkins, Rivas stayed silent on the stand. He didn't pull the trigger. That was later attributed to another member of the gang. But he was behind the wheel. He ran over Hawkins' body, and in the hours after, he celebrated. At trial, his own attorney, Wayne Huff, admitted the truth. Rivas had handpicked men he knew were dangerous. He orchestrated the breakout. He led the robberies, and he bore responsibility for what happened when a police officer showed up. The jury didn't deliberate long. Capital murder, death penalty, and in a stunning moment, Rivas stood in court and said, "I deserve to be executed." Not defiance, not sarcasm. A statement. For years, he stood by it. He dropped appeals. He refused clemency campaigns. While others fought for delays, Rivas seemed ready to go. But time changes people, even men who've spent decades behind glass. As the years passed, 2001 to 2012, something shifted. He married a woman named Cherie by proxy, forming one of the few real emotional ties of his adult life. He spoke with chaplains. He received letters from strangers asking why, and slowly the mask began to crack. In the final weeks before execution, Rivas didn't fight the system. He didn't demand last-minute stays. Instead, he made phone calls to his son, to his sister, to friends on death row. And when the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles met to consider clemency, his legal team didn't argue innocence. They asked for mercy, not for the man who escaped prison, but for the one who, at the end, finally seemed to feel the weight of what he'd done. The board voted 7-0 to deny clemency. No court stepped in. No last appeal was filed. The system had run its course. But in that final hour, as he lay on the gurney, Rivas didn't speak of justice, or punishment, or even his own fate. He spoke of them, the family of Aubrey Hawkins, and for the first time in over a decade, he offered words that weren't calculated, weren't defiant, but quiet, personal, and painfully human. Redemption? Maybe not, but something close to regret. And in the end, that was all he had left. February 29th, 2012, 6:12 p.m., the doors of the execution chamber at the Huntsville unit open. George Rivas, 41 years old, walks in under his own power, calm, composed, wearing a white prison uniform. He's led to the gurney, arms extended, no last meal of his choosing. Texas had ended that practice years earlier. Like every other inmate that day, he ate the standard prison meal, barbecue chicken. The fourth lines are secured. The warden asks, "Do you have any final words?" Rivas pauses, then speaks. "First of all, for the Aubrey Hawkins family, I do apologize for everything that happened. Not because I am here, but for closure in your hearts. I really believe you deserve that." A beat, then to his wife Cherie, "I love you so dearly. I will be waiting for you." To his son, his sister, his friends on death row, he offers love, thanks, respect, even to the guards. "Thank you for your courtesy." And then 3 simple words. "I am ready to go." Not defiant, not dramatic, just ready. 10 minutes later, at 6:22 p.m., he is pronounced dead, the second of the Texas 7 to be executed. Outside, more than 24 Irving police officers stand in silence. They came not to celebrate, but to bear witness, to honor Aubrey Hawkins, to make sure he wasn't forgotten in the final moments of the man who helped destroy his life. Inside, the Hawkins family did not watch. They had been present for another Texas 7 execution in 2008. It brought no peace, only the painful truth. No execution can bring back a father, a husband, a brother, and yet, Rivas's words linger, "Not because I am here, but for closure in your hearts." He didn't say he was sorry for pulling the trigger. He didn't confess to murder. But he acknowledged the hurt, not the crime, not the punishment, but the grief left behind. Was it manipulation? Or was it the closest thing to remorse he could offer after a lifetime of violence, control, and escape? Because here's the truth. George Rivas spent years building walls, physical, emotional, psychological. He broke out of prison only to live in another of his own making. And in the end, with the needle in his arm and time running out, he didn't reach for power. He reached for connection, not redemption, not forgiveness, just the faint hope that somewhere a family might find peace, even if he never truly could. George Rivas took part in a crime that ended a good man's life. Officer Aubrey Hawkins never got a final moment with his family. His daughter was born weeks after he was gone. Rivas faced justice, and in his last words he apologized, not for himself, but for the pain he caused. Was it enough? Was it real? Or did it come far too late? If this story made you think, like, subscribe, and share not for drama, but because remembering both the victim and the choices that led to this moment is how we begin to understand the true cost of violence. Before you comment, pause. Think of Aubrey Hawkins, then ask, can words at the end ever balance the silence left behind? Share your answer below.